Howdy, I'm Mike Cermak from Tech Support Guy, and today I'm going to do a laptop review, which is not something I typically do, but I've had a lot of people ask me about my changes in laptops recently, and I thought it would be something interesting to share. So typically, I have been a Surface Pro kind of guy, and for those who don't know the Surface Pro, it's nice because you can make it a laptop, or make it into a laptop, or make it into a tablet. I often will carry it around with me. This kind of goes with me everywhere, whether I'm working at home or watching Netflix or carrying it with me from job to job. It comes in handy. I like that I can flip it around. If there's no desk space where I'm working, I can pull it out and use it in tablet mode to look up tickets or do some network testing or whatever I need to do. I really like it. The problem I've had with it is that it's almost 3 years old and the kickstand has broken on it. So the way this thing works in laptop mode is it has this little thing called a kickstand that kicks out of the bottom. Can you see that? Yeah. And you just set it up on the desk like that and it works like a laptop. And it's really nice because you can move it in a lot of different angles. I'm not going to do that too much on mine because, as I said, it's broken. It's very delicate and this little tab is not supposed to be sticking up here. And if you look carefully, you can see where the hinge is broken over here. But in any event, the other downside to this is it's kind of slow. The battery life has not been so great. It is, like I said, a couple of years old. But the lapability is what some people call this. That whenever you put this on your lap, let's see if I can get to an angle where you can kind of see my lap here. Because of the kickstand, it has to be on your knees, and this is just barely on the edge of my knees here. And if I'm not careful, it'll fall down and not be useful. So as a result, it really needs to be much closer to my chest than what I would want it to be. And while I'm typing, my arms are much further back than what I'd like. It's not all that comfortable for that. And again here, just as I'm closing it, that you can see that broken hinge there. And I don't believe, you would think that this design would be frequently susceptible to breaks like that because it's so reliant on that hinge. I haven't run into that before. I've never seen one of these hinges break like that before. I don't know if one of my kids got a hold of it or if I'm just too abusive or if I'm just had bad luck, but I don't want you to go away thinking that that's a common problem with these Surface Pros because I don't believe that it is. I'm sure I'm not the first person with it, but I don't think it's common. So this is what I was using. I like the tablet mode of it. I like a lot. I wish it had more power. I wish it had more battery. And I looked at getting a newer one. The Surface Pro 7 is the current one out as I make this. But apparently the battery life isn't that great on those either, although of course there are much faster CPUs available on it. So that was one consideration. What I decided to do after some research is I got this LG laptop. Didn't even know that LG made laptops, but they do. This is an LG Gram, and this is an LG Gram 14-inch 2-in-1. And the 2-in-1 part of it is what is important to me. First of all, it lets you fold it out like a normal laptop, like you would expect. Also, you can fold it all the way around. Some people used to call these convertible laptops. And you can switch it around all the way into a tablet here, or you can use it in this presentation mode, or in a tent mode, or any variation, anything in between. And I really like it. One thing that I like about this versus the Surface, with the Surface, it had really deep angles that I could put the laptop way back this direction. But whenever it was in tablet mode, whenever I had it folded out like this, due to the way that hinge works, I can't really bring this up to 90 degrees, if you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. You can't have the screen up at 90 degrees because there's nothing to support it. So you have to be back at like 45 degrees, maybe a little bit more than that. But it goes all the way down to a very low one or all the way to 0. And one thing that I did like about the LG is that I could run it at any angle, including even at a 90 degrees. So if I set it up like this in what they call presentation mode, you can see here, which works really well for me when I'm sitting there watching Netflix. I can sit this on a table just like this, have it aimed at exactly the angle I want, and it works really well. It doesn't go back quite as far as the other one does, with the hinge loses support somewhere in here and just collapses, whereas the Surface Pro wouldn't. So somewhere in here, it doesn't support itself anymore. It's got a huge, I think it's a 70 watt-hour battery in it, which is huge for a laptop, especially this size, an Ultrabook. It's a Core i7. It's I'm not going to go into all the specs. I'm not going to spend time looking over performance data on these laptops because there's plenty of videos that do that better than what I could. I'm just going to look at some of the functionality of it. I'll talk about the ports a little bit. On my old Surface Pro, the only ports I have on this guy is a USB-A and a display port and the Surface port. On the newer ones, they also have USB-C. And I don't think they have DisplayPort anymore. I think it's just USB-A, USB-C on the new Surface Pros. But on this LG Gram, like I said, it's very light. I'll put the stats up there for the weight and dimensions and everything. It's got a USB-A on one side, as well as a Kensington lock and a 1/8-inch headphone and microphone jack, and a sleep button for some reason, and a micro SD card slot, which is kind of nice. On the other side, we've got we've got some LEDs. First of all, on the right side, we've got LEDs. So I've got a hard drive activity light on it, which is, I don't remember the last time I saw a hard drive activity light on a laptop, but there is one. A charging light, USB-C, of course, HDMI, full-size HDMI, which is nice, USB-A, and then a pin power. So on this LG, you can charge it either by the pin power supply that's provided or by the USB-C. And I liked that idea because I have an Android phone that's USB-C. I really believe in USB-C, so I like that I could do that. I don't know why they bothered to put a pin on there if it also has USB-C, but whatever, two options are better than none. I wish it had more than one USB-C on it. I probably would have taken two USB-Cs over two USB-As, but whatever. And the full HDMI is kind of nice, right? I liked that. So a couple things I didn't like about this. I had a lot of problems. And here's the nuts and the bolts of it. Here's the thing. First time I turned it on, the first thing I noticed on it is the sound. The sound is just terrible on this. And I'm not a sound guy. I'm not an audiophile. I don't care about sound like a lot of people do. That's not even something that went into my consideration when I was trying to choose a laptop. I don't really care about sound. But it turns out I care about sound. So I turn this thing on, Cortana comes up, starts talking to me, and I notice it's crap. And I play some YouTube videos because that's how I learn how to do anything, programming or changing a kitchen sink or fixing a toilet or whatever. I watch a YouTube video, and I can barely understand what people are saying on it. Not only are there just two tiny, awful speakers on the base of this thing, they're very tinny, they're very hard to understand, but especially when they're sitting on my lap. The nice thing with this laptop is that it can be used as a laptop, right? Because I don't have to have this up against my chest. I can have this up here at a more comfortable location. But the speakers are pointed into my legs, not toward my ears like with the Surface Pro. And I think that makes a big difference. But it was just unusably bad sound. I was very disappointed. Now, I understand that they are in the process. I don't think they've released them as of when I purchased this, but they're going to be releasing the version of this with the 10th gen CPUs, and they're supposed to have some improvements on the sound. I don't know how it could be any worse, so hopefully it'll be a big improvement, because even though I'm not a sound person, as soon as I started to use it, I decided that that's it. This is not, I'm going to have to return this. It's just that terrible. The other reason I need to return it, the other thing that drives me crazy about it, is that it's supposed to be a 2-in-1. It's supposed to be a convertible that I can switch it over and use it as a laptop. Let me log in here just so you can, use it as a tablet. Let me log in here and just so you can see what's going on here. So if I'm logged in, I'm using it as a laptop. Everything is well and good. If I fold it over to use it as a tablet, the keys on the back stay active for a while. So if I hit the start button on the keyboard on the back, I'm hitting the start button, and you can see the start menu still popping up for a while. Well, I just pushed another button apparently. Oh, there you go. So it just turned off. So it took that long for it to turn off the start button. To turn off the keyboard. And likewise, whenever I flip it back over here into laptop mode and start using it, I'm typing, there it goes. So it only took, 5 or 10 seconds that time to switch back. Sometimes it's up to a minute. I'll flip it over and I'll be, hitting keys with my hand, which you're supposed to be able to do. That's what happens with the Surface and every other two-in-one I've ever used. But for some reason on this one, the keys, and I have it completely closed here, but the keys on the back remain active for far, far, far too long. There it goes. It just deactivated. So in both those cases, that actually wasn't too bad. I've had cases where it took almost a minute before it stopped, and then when I flipped it back over, almost a minute before I could start using it again. Drives me crazy, especially when I have applications up on the screen and I'm punching buttons without knowing it. Almost unusable. The other thing with this one, and I've heard that there's some quality control issues with the LGs, there's a burn-in across the bottom of the screen. I don't know if you can see that. If I bring up like an all solid colored background, you might be able to see it. It's not a burn-in. I misspoke. It's a bleed, LCD panel bleed, which is not uncommon, but it's noticeable on this, and I wasn't very pleased with that. I'm very particular, I guess. And the backlight keys don't work. So there's a button here for backlit keys, but I can't get them to come on. The other thing that bothers me about the functions, not only does the backlight not work, but I have to hold down the function key in order to do brightness or volume. There's not like a function lock, or at least not one that I found. So I actually, instead of just having to hit, F11, F12 on this one for volume, I have to hold down function F11, F12, or excuse me, F10, F11, which is just, I don't know, am I that particular? I guess I am. But just another little thing. Now, one thing I do like about this is the fingerprint reader. They have a fingerprint reader that is right here as part of the power button. On the Surface Pros, instead of a fingerprint reader, they have the Windows Hello IR camera. This doesn't have the IR camera. It does have a regular webcam, but not the Windows Hello webcam that can identify your face. With this one, they have Windows Hello fingerprint reader. So when I open it up, it doesn't look at me and open up like a Surface Pro would. I have to touch the key. One thing that I really was surprised by on this is when I push the power button to boot this up, if it's asleep or if it's shut down, if I push that power button to boot it up, Windows will log in. It'll go through its normal BIOS screen will come up, it'll start up, it does a normal startup, and then Windows logs in, which tells me that power button with the fingerprint reader in it also has some little bit of memory in it. So I'm hitting the fingerprint, but Windows has to start up before it can unlock and log me in. And that surprised me. I thought I would have to hit the power button, wait for it to boot up, and then put my fingerprint on it for Windows to see it. But no, it did it by itself, which was really a nice experience. I liked that. So I think that's enough about this laptop. I just was disappointed in it and didn't want to have to carry this around with me and be driven crazy with it. So what I have now, and I've only had this for a day or so, so I can't really give you a full review on it yet, but it's a Lenovo Yoga, and the Yoga part of it is that it can do the 2-in-1 thing, so that it works as a laptop, and then it can be pulled the whole way back around, just like the other one, to be able to be used as a tablet. Nice thing in this case is, unlike the LG, it instantly disables the keyboard. So as soon as I flip it over, it's not, I can do whatever I want, and it's not doing anything to Windows. And likewise, as soon as I flip it back, it comes back to laptop mode, so I can start typing right away, which is not even something I would think I would have to look for. I thought that would be a basic function of a 2-in-1 laptop. I didn't think that would be a differentiator. So I've got that going. I really like this so far. It's a little bit heavier than the LG. The LG is super light, and the Lenovo's a little bit heavier. The LG has the 70 watt-hour battery. The Lenovo, I think it's only a 60 watt-hour. I'll put it up on the screen. And they're a little bit different in dimensions. So the Lenovo is a little bit bigger in one dimension and the LG a little bit bigger in the other dimension. They're about the same. Here, I'll show you all of them stacked up just to give you some scale. So here we have the Microsoft Surface on the top, and underneath that we've got the LG, and underneath that we've got the Lenovo. And so this Lenovo, I haven't really identified it, have I? It's a Yoga, and it's a C940. One thing that someone suggested to me that I look at the C940s, and I looked them up online and saw 15-inch screens, and I thought I don't want to carry a 15-point whatever inch screen with me, but it turns out that Lenovo has two C940s. There's a 14-inch model and a 15-inch model, which are both C940s, because why not? Because that doesn't confuse anyone. The biggest thing for me that kind of got me to try this is the sound bar. Right across the bottom here, we've got this big bar that has speakers that actually face my face instead of facing my legs. And it makes all the difference in the world. There are also speakers on the bottom here, which I suspect are more for the bass and the subwoofer purposes. But I can tell you the sound between these two are just night and day. I've been very happy with that. Also, backlit keys that actually work is a great feature. It's it's everything that I hoped that the LG would be. Some downsides to this is that it is a little bit heavier, especially compared to my Surface Pro. I can notice a difference. I can grab them both pretty easily. One problem I had with the LG also is just picking it up with one hand and taking it somewhere with me. The Surface Pro has that cover on it that makes it easier to grab. The Yoga here, the Lenovo, has these two thicker kind of rubberish bands across the bottom, which are used to hold it still on a surface so that it doesn't slide. But because they're not just little feet like you would normally have, because they're whole long bands here on both sides, it makes it really easy whenever I go to grab it and pick it up and hold it. It's kind of catching under my fingers a little bit, just giving me a little bit of something to grab onto, and I've liked that aspect of it. It feels solid. The LG here just doesn't feel solid. If I open it up here, and this is the other thing, right? So opening the LG, for some reason, I have trouble getting my finger under there to open it. The Lenovo here, it has this big kind of, now it doesn't open with one hand, but it has this ridge across the top. I don't know if you can see that well here. Wish I could get a little closer to you, but it has a ridge across the top that pops up a little bit, which makes it easier to open and shut. The LG just looks like it has a little bit of flex to it. So I don't think it's going to break real easily, but you can see here at the top, there's just a little bit of flex in this monitor. Likewise, when I'm typing here in the keyboard, there's just a little bit of flex in it. It just doesn't feel solid. It doesn't feel like a premium top-of-the-line laptop. And this guy here, you can see this keyboard. I mean, there's a tiny bit of flex there, but hardly anything. And again, the screen feels much more sturdy. I'm sure I could break it at the right angle, given enough weight, of course, but it feels more solid than the LG does, which it should. I think it's a little bit more expensive laptop as well. Talking about ports on the side, we've got a USB-A, we've got two USB-Cs, and we've got a headphone jack, and that is it. That's all this guy has. On the other side, it's just the power button. So there's nothing else on it. I kind of wish that there was a USB-C on the other side near the power plug, because as it turns out, where I usually work on this, where I usually use this, the power is on the right side. I suspect they kept all the ports on the left side just to keep things clean and also keep it away from your mouse if you're right-handed. But it would have been nice to have a port on the other side just to be able to charge from either side. One thing I did miss, and again, it's only been a few days that I've been trying the 2-in-1 instead of the Surface, but one thing I did miss is volume control. So on the Surface, I've got buttons right up here on the top where I can increase or decrease the volume, which is really convenient when I'm using it in tablet mode. I can just hit the buttons up here. If I'm watching, again, a YouTube video or something, I can quickly adjust the volume here without having to go down here. And especially, it's a little awkward using YouTube and Netflix and stuff with fingers and not a mouse. So you go in here and adjust the volume. It's not a great experience. I've just gotten used to just tapping these buttons. And that, of course, doesn't exist on any 2-in-1 that I'm aware of. There's a USB button that I've installed in this that's called a Nanobutton, and I'm just testing it out. I haven't decided for sure that I'm going to keep it. It requires a little bit more pushing. You can't hit it accidentally, I would say. You have to intentionally push it. But I've programmed it. You can program it to do whatever you want when you push the button. I programmed it to bring up the volume slider so that I can touch it and then adjust the slide, the volume on the computer. And that's worked out pretty well for me. I think I'm going to keep it that way, but I haven't decided yet. So these days, more than ever, the webcam is an important factor. I'm talking to you right now using the microphone and the camera in the Surface Pro that I've had for 2 or 3 years. And it's by far the best quality one of the three. It's 1080p, 30 frames per second, but more important than that, as you'll see, it's really sharp and a good quality camera. If I switch over here, I'm now on the LG, and it's got a 720 camera on it. It's softer, the colors don't look quite right, and I'll be eager to hear what the microphone sounds like. But overall, it doesn't look terrible. I'm now talking to you on the Lenovo C940. It's a little bit grainy. I think it's the worst of the three cameras. You can see it especially right up in here. It does have a privacy cover on the camera, so I can flip that over and see physically that there's something over the lens of the camera. It's not an IR camera. Again, it's a 720, so it doesn't do Windows Hello. It does have a fingerprint reader for Windows Hello, just like the LG does. The screens come in two different types. You can get a 4K screen or you can get just a 1080p screen. I opted for the 1080p because it gets 2 to 3 hours better battery life, which is more important to me than 4K on a 14-inch screen. I think that's about it. One other thing I should mention about this Lenovo is it has a stylus that's hidden inside of it. So in the back, there's a little stylus there that gets housed in this silo, and it's rechargeable stylus, and it has two little pins here that automatically get lined up when you put it in there that then charges the stylus when it's in the laptop. I like it. I don't use a stylus that often. I did have a stylus for the Surface Pro, and I think the LG Gram comes with a stylus. Stylus is not an important factor for me, but if it is for you, I like the idea here that I'm not going to lose it. It's just going to always be right there. So that seems like a nice feature to me. I think that's about all to tell you about. The battery life, I've been very happy with both of them. This one is the Core i7 10th generation. I've even done a little bit of video editing on it. I ran Adobe Premiere and rendered some videos. One thing to be aware of on the Yoga is that the default settings on it come up with these quiet fan settings. And I'll show you where that is on here. In the Lenovo application here, by default from the factory, it came set to keep these fans quiet, and as a result, I was really disappointed in the rendering time. Whenever I was doing something heavy, graphic heavy on this laptop, it was much slower than the LG was, and then I discovered that it was trying to keep the fans quiet, and it was just thermal throttling, so turning that off made a huge difference. The fans are still not terrible. I mean, when you're rendering, yeah, you can hear them, or if you're gaming, if you're a gamer, you would hear them, but it's nice you have that option, but it's just something to be aware of. If you're not getting the performance you expect out of it, check that setting, make sure the fans are kicking up when they need to. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. I will be eager to hear your suggestions if I've overlooked something important between these. If there's something more you want to know about them, let me know, and good luck in your own shopping. I'll see you later. For more information about our site, head to www.techguy.org.